What is happening, guys? Welcome back to Redbeard's Garage. On today's video, we're going to start tearing apart this Kandi Spyder. This is a 150 go-kart, and this is my daughter's. It's been sitting outside with a broken belt on it for a while, and we're not a huge fan of these 150s. They're a good starter kart, but we like to upgrade them with bigger engines. The front ends are great on them, but they just lack power. So we're getting ready. This is all in preparation for the Redbeard's Garage race in October. So we got a bunch of people coming over, Cars and Cameras, Weatherby Welding, Build Break and Repeat, Vasily Custom Builds. We got Kevin from Junkyard Digs. We've got all types of people coming down, Trantis Customs, and we're gonna be racing big block or smaller full suspension go-karts around a 1 mile trail, 10 laps. So that means I have to get 3 carts ready, one for me, Braxton, and Lonnie, and I also have to get a couple spares ready for people that can't. Some people's going to be flying in, and Kevin from Junkyard Digs will not have something. So we got to start prepping. Let's get the rear section pulled off of this. We're going to be putting a 440 that's stage 2, as well as a Polaris reverse gearbox, or we may go with the Go Power Sports, and I haven't decided yet. But Go Power Sports actually sells everything to turn this into independent rear suspension. They sell the trailing arms, the Jackshaft, the CV axles, everything. So make sure to check out the links for all these parts in the video description. We should just have to build up an engine section that holds our engine and the rear end, and we'll go from there. So let's start tearing all the stuff off this. You got to remove the whole wiring harness and everything and get this ready for the big block swap. All right, so this is the 420 that we're going to be using on that that Kandi cart. So we're going to be running a CVT off of a Polaris 2-stroke 4-wheeler. So this is off a Magnum 400 4-wheeler. The only problem is it is tapered shaft and not straight shaft. And if you guys don't know, a Predator 420 is a 1-inch straight shaft with a keyway in it. So on Amazon, you can use the links in the video description to buy one of these straight to tapered adapters. So if you see, it slides on the shaft and it gives us the same taper that the Polaris pulley has. So once you put the bolt in it, it kind of sandwiches the pulley onto this and keeps it from rotating. We're also going to be running this 70 amp alternator because we're going to have a lot of light bars. She's going to have a radio, all kinds of accessories, a winch and everything. So we want to give her enough charging capability to replenish that battery. So we got this mini drag alternator we got to mount as well. The reason why we're using this Polaris pulley is because it's one of the most capable pulleys of what power we can get out of this 420. And we're going to be running the differential off that ATV as well. So this is a series we got to run. We have this spacer right here. This is a 1/2-inch spacer. So we slide it on, and the reason we're running this is because the keyway on this crankshaft kind of ramps up in the rear. So the keyway only really starts about a 1/2 inch from the end of this shaft. So we're putting that there to start the keyway exactly where we need it. Then Vegas Karts sells these pulleys. This is a V-belt pulley that goes on a 1-inch shaft. These are for their golf carts. We're going to slide it on. And this is what's going to drive our alternator. Now, the only problem is once we put this tapered shaft on, you can see that we have a lot of crankshaft left over, and we don't need that. Now I could just put spacers and push this out to here, but the only reason I don't want to do that is that's putting a lot of stress on the end of this crankshaft. So we could run a spacer behind this to get this dead even with the end, or we can cut some of the crankshaft off, and that's the method I'm going to use because I want this crankshaft as short as I can get it. All right, so the finished product is this. Now, I know this looks like it's sticking way off the engine, but I'm gonna do a sandwich plate that goes in between the engine and the actual engine plate that comes out, comes up, and has a supporting bearing there. Now, so what you'll have to do to take off this pulley is there'll be 2 1/2-inch bolts down there that hold this supporting bearing on this actual plate. So we can do a little bushing right here that slides into this, and it's hard to explain, but once we build it you guys will understand. So that'll be supported, so that'll be no stress on the crankshaft. Now, this is the Polaris differential that came off that ATV. It stood up just like this. So this is the driven pulley. You have the selectors there. It has high, low, forward and reverse and neutral, so that's pretty awesome. So I came up with this off camera, this whole mounting setup, built these ears around, and supports it in every location I could. There's 2 down there, and there's also 1 back here. So that's every mount that I could use supporting this. Now, I've drilled some 3/8 holes in this. So this hole set up, once we get the jack shaft on there, you'll tension this to the jack shaft first, and then when you bolt the engine up, we're gonna try to do a 10.5 from center of this to center of the drive pulley, the primary, and that'll allow us to use a original Polaris belt like off a Razor or something. So that'll be awesome. We'll have the reliability of a Polaris clutch setup. You know, with this kind of horsepower, we'll probably never see belt wear on this setup. So yeah, there'll be multiple adjustments, but really you're just mainly getting this where you can tension the chain. And I was worried about this. This is a dipstick. So this dipstick here is still able to pull out and check the fluid in the differential. So this does not get in the way of that. That should be a pretty beefy mount. I wouldn't see that ever messing up. You can tell this 4-wheeler had some wear on it. So we have a lot of teeth missing, so we're going to replace this. So we can't mount all this until we get our trailing arms mounted. I want the trailing arms mounted first, then I'll mount the jack shaft. So what we have to do is start adapting our trailing arms, and we got junk laid everywhere because we got some new tool organizers we'll be talking about in a later video. Things are pretty sweet for my Milwaukee stuff. But we're going to cut these bushings off. We're going to put some of these QS component heim joints. These are super strong. We've been using these on everything. So we'll have 3/4 inch heim joints in the end of our trailing arms, so we can get adjustment, you know, and get our tire alignment correct, because with this you're basically welding it on correct, and if you don't, you're crooked. So we'll have a good amount of, you know, good 1.5 inch, really about 1 inch of adjustment with these. So after a substantial amount of grinding and cutting, that wasn't fun, that sucked. But we got this one adapted. We still got one more to do. So I cut that bushing out there, and then I cut a relief and like just V cut in here and bent that down. And this is the factory 1/4 inch plating they had. So once I weld inside of that, I can bend that back down and re-weld it. But that'll give us heim joints, so these are fully adjustable trailing arms, so we can adjust alignment and whatnot, because as I stated, there was no way to do that. There's been a lot of cutting and grinding on this mud trucker. Benchmark braces help that out. Ha ha! Best grinding disc in the game, player! Woo! Alright, so this is how the back section is going to be set up. I put a 10 degrees notch in this 1 1/4 1/8 thick wall tubing, or 11 gauge. And we cut the original tabs off that was here, so I'm going to tack this in. And then what will happen is this trailing arm will be on the outside over here, kind of bumped up against, no, sorry, like that. This outside tab will touch the outside tubing. I'm going to have to build a new tab for it. But that's where our tab will have alignment adjustment in the heim joint. So that's how our trailing arms will be. So that'll be the length of the, which is actually a roundabout. It's a little longer than the factory setup was, but it's gonna look sick. This is how our diff's gonna be. We're gonna come off this lower square tubing, come back with a chassis part that comes up here, and that'll house the jack shaft and the gearbox. Once all that's mounted, we get our CVs lined up and stuff. Then we can build an upper level for the engine, try to keep the 10.5-inch center to center from this to the Predator. And he's gonna cut, Dave's my older brother, by the way.
Brother you didn't know you had?
Through Christ. Cut myself. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. He's gonna cut the crankshaft off the Predator, because if you've ever seen a tapered shaft, they're only, what, an inch long? Probably. Yeah. That's my brother. So he's gonna cut the crankshaft off to leave a nub so we have less strain on the crankshaft. We'll show you all that later. It's gonna be a sweet setup. So we're gonna get this leveled in here. We gotta level out the frame, then level this out, tack it in. Then I can start tacking on all my tabs, and we'll have almost a roller, which I can honestly mount the shocks. I don't know where they're gonna be, and I want this more on the stiff side, because I'm thicker than buttermilk. So if someone's in with me, maybe another thicker than buttermilk person, then I want it to not be maxing out the shock. So I want it kind of stiff for my daughter, weak for, not weak, but mushy for me. Okay. See how Dave put the level on the actual hub, because we cannot adjust our camber, but we can adjust our alignment in and out. And we move this one out to move the back of the tire back, or move this one out, the inside one, to move it the opposite. And the bubble does change a little bit as we go down, but this thing's not going to have a ridiculous amount of travel, because we're stuck to go-kart shocks. Clamps. Doing like acrobatics on the crap.
No, I was a gymnast, did you?
I did not. I know you had the body of one, but I didn't know.
Not hardly.
Alright, we need to go down on that side, player. Can we use this little tapper? Oh, no. A little bit more. The level?
No, I said it's pretty level. The chassis is really close to being level on the floor pan.
That'd be squatted.
Yeah. You want it up in the air more?
Mm-hmm.
Back up?
You'll start this back to the center now?
Yeah.
I would think starting it. I would think start like that. So we have, like maybe a little, maybe right there, so it squats down. That's a beefy looking setup. We'll probably have to cut those fender mounts off.
Look at this.
Those are stiff shocks. Those are super stiff.
So they're probably going to want to be angled in order to get.
I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of weight. That's up.
Yeah.
I'd say pretty much straight up. The 150s are straight up, and they hardly move. Okay. But they only got a 150 engine. We're doing a 440 with a reverse, the jack shaft. So I don't know, we're pretty close. Set it to home. Once it gets home, put it on 20 degrees. Flip. Pick that up and flip it. Please don't drop it.
Wow. That'd suck.
Crap for brains. My hands are dirty. put the clamp. Go ahead. Oh, return it home. Spin that right there. Timer. Oh, it's straight. 20 again. Put it down. Good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be right. But the creek is rising. It is indeed. Hey, they brand new, cuz. They brand new, player.
Play a G pimp.
Alright guys, so we ran out of time to do any more in this video, but we got the whole swing arm set up, or the whole back end, engine, cradle, whatever you want to call this thing. We got it ready to go into the go-kart frame. So on the next episode, we should have the diff and the jack shaft and also the engine mounted and have a big portion of the work done. There's some wiring to do that, of course, I'll do off camera, but this thing is pretty sweet. It's just going to pretty much set. These are longer than I needed them. They'll be cut down, but I don't want to do that until I, put it up to the go-kart and see how much I actually need to cut down. So this is going to be pretty sick. Like I said, this is a player stiff. It has forward and reverse and high and low, so that 30 horse 420 is going to be a perfect match with that. Won't overpower. It'll keep this thing super healthy, and since we're using the CVT setup off the ATV, it's going to work great. And I did have to buy some new ramps for this driven pulley. We'll be installing those in the next one, and since we're running that player's pulley, we have unlimited adjustment on engagement, and so this thing's going to perform really well. Make sure to check out the links for all this stuff in the video's description. Those help us out a ton, and let us know what you think of this Kandi cart. I've always wanted to do this to a 150 cart. I've had these trailing arms sitting around for years, like 3 years, and I didn't know the cart I wanted to use it on. So this is going to be the perfect setup for my daughter. Have everything she would ever need: an alternator, electric start. It's going to have reverse, high and low. So this will be the ultimate 150 cart, still using a go-kart style engine. So make sure to check out those links and let us know what you think of the build. We love you guys, and God bless.